as a foreign trained licensed professional, in order to obtain your Canadian license to practice in your profession, it is very complex and it is a very challenging process. The reason is because each territory, each province in Canada have their own regulatory body that is responsible for issuing license to professionals in various fields, and the requirement for obtaining such license in different provinces also vary widely. You want to migrate to Canada and practice as in your profession. But before I talk about the process of obtaining the Canadian license, if you're a trained professional, let me talk about some of the challenges you may likely face when trying to obtain your Canadian license as a foreign trained professional. Okay. Number one thing is going to be credential assessment. Now, a lot of regulatory bodies in Canada will require foreign trained professionals, doctors, lawyers, nurses, and others, to have their credentials assessed. The reason is because they want to determine if what you have meet the Canadian standard, and this can be a very lengthy and expensive process. And the reason why they do this assessment is to see if the educational qualifications or training that you have actually meet the requirements for a Canadian license. That's actually the first step. The next thing is going to be language proficiency. You may need to really demonstrate your proficiency in English or French because you may be coming from an English-speaking country, you know, maybe in Africa, in Asia, in Europe, any other country. They want to be sure that they can actually communicate in English or French, okay? I mean, depending on the province that you plan to work. If you are planning to Quebec, to go to Quebec, of course, then English should be a top priority, okay? So this may actually require you to take some English test like the CELP, it is an English test, or the IELTS, you know, is also an English test. The third thing that is also problematic is actually work experience. Now, some regulatory bodies will actually require some foreign trained professionals to have certain kind of work experience in their field, you know, before they apply for a license. And of course, this can be challenging because you're not going to go look for a company where you can work, you know, to kind of get that limited work experience, especially if the work experience you've gathered in your country is not fully recognized in Canada. So you need to work here, you know, some kind of experience. It can be an internship just to kind of get that Canadian work experience. Another third challenge is going to be some kinds of exams and certification, right? There are some exams or some additional certifications that you need to have to demonstrate that your knowledge, to demonstrate your actual knowledge and skills in your profession. I mean, another thing is that these exams can be maybe specific to the territory or the province that you're planning to work. So if you want to go to Quebec or Montreal or Ontario or Newfoundland, you have to check exactly what they have there. Building a professional network in Canada can really be critical to finding this employment in your field when you're not in Canada. So you may need to attend a lot of university events, you know, join some professional association, and you have to connect to professionals in your field, you know, to really increase the chance of finding a job. Now, let me break down what each of the professions actually require. Let's talk about doctors. Now, in Canada, the licensing and certification for doctors is handled by what we call the Medical Council of Canada, MCC, and they also have provincial and territorial medical regulatory authorities. So every foreign trained doctors must pass this MCC examination and also complete a residency program here in Canada. So you may also need to complete, you know, any additional training or exams in order to meet the requirement of this regulatory body in the province and the territory that you plan to work. I hope that's clear. Let's talk about nurses. Now, the nursing profession is regulated in Canada by provincial and territorial nursing regulatory bodies. So if you are a foreign trained nurse, you must have your credential assessed by the regulatory body in the province or the territory where you plan to work. Okay, so you may have to complete additional education or training in order to meet the Canadian standard. Okay, so you must also pass the National Nursing Licensure Examination, they call it NCLS. for registered nurses to obtain a license. Okay, let's talk about pharmacists. Now, the licensing of pharmacists in Canada is regulated by what they refer to as the National Association of Pharmacy Regulatory Authorities, NAPRA. Now, the province and the territories, they also have their own pharmacy regulation. Okay, so if you are a foreign trained pharmacist, you must pass a certain examination. It's called the Pharmacy Examining Board of Canada, PEBC. You have to pass that evaluation process. That also includes you, knowledgeable, doing a knowledgeable assessment and an objective, structured clinical evaluation, the OSCE. They may also need you to complete an additional training or certification or training to meet the Canadian standard. There might be few courses that you have to take to qualify you now to actually practice in Canada. It looks like a lot of work, but it is possible. Okay, it just takes a lot of time. Let's talk about engineers. Now, the engineering profession in Canada is regulated the same by province and also by the territory. They have their engineering regulatory bodies, that actually regulate this profession. So if you are a foreign trained engineer, you also have to have your credential evaluated by this regulatory body in the province and also in the territory where you plan to work. And you may need to complete any additional training, any education, to meet that Canadian standard. And you have to also pass the National Professional Practice Exam, NPPE, and also what they call the Professional Engineers Exam to obtain a license. Let's talk about lawyers. So in Canada, same, the legal profession is also regulated at the provincial level and also at the territorial level. So there are kind of societies that regulate these professions. So if you're a foreign trade lawyer, you have to get your credentials assessed by these law society in a province or a territory where you plan to work, so that they can determine whatever you've achieved in your country, how close is this to a Canadian standard. And you have to pass the bar exam in order to obtain a license to practice law. Let's conclude here. The process of obtaining a Canadian license as a foreign trained professional can be really challenging, but it is not something that is impossible. So it's important for you to actually do a lot of research, countless numbers of hours doing research, to know the requirement that the regulatory body in your field and also the province or the territory where you plan to work, and it's very important to seek guidance from immigration consultants and also other professionals who can help you navigate the process. So that is going to be it for this video. If you have the question, leave the question in the comment section, and don't forget to hit the like button. It's going to help the YouTube algorithm recommend this video to other people. And if you haven't subscribed, do it to hit the subscribe button so whenever new videos are released, you'll be the first person to get notified. So thank you so much for watching this video. I will see you in the next video.